Hey everybody, today's video is going to be a little bit different. Any of you who know me from real life know that I love to cook, and I will admit, I also love to brag about the things that I cook. It seems that a lot of people get the idea that cooking is something that takes a lot of skill that they just don't have. They think you have to be born with some special talent to be able to cook good food. But what I want to do is use a new series of brief cooking tutorials to show you guys how to cook some really great food using really simple ingredients, to try to show you that anybody can learn how to cook. There's just a few items of prep work here. We need to cook some rice, because I like to have rice in my burritos. We need to cut up the onion that's going to go into the chicken filling, and of course we need to cut the chicken breast. So first things first, let's start by getting the rice going, because that can sit and boil while we do everything else. So for rice, you're just going to want a standard saucepan. When you're cooking with rice, it's good to remember a standard 2-to-1 ratio for water to rice. So for every cup of rice that you put into the pan, you're going to want 2 cups of water. Also, rice is a lot like pasta in the fact that it's really easy to accidentally cook too much. So a good rule of thumb is if the rice is part of the main dish, then you're going to want about 2 cups for every 3 people or so. But if it's for something like this, we're just going to put a little bit into a burrito, you're going to want to cut that down to about maybe a half cup or so per person. But that 2-to-1 ratio of water to rice still remains the same. Okay, so we're just going to put the rice on a high temperature over here on the stove. And we're just going to let that go for a while. That's going to do its own thing. Next up, we're going to cut up an onion. I've got a half of an onion here because it's only me. I don't need an entire onion. Also, it's obviously best to cut vegetables on a cutting board, but I can't find mine, so we're just going to use this piece of foil. To get a good chopped onion, all you really need to do is cut it lengthwise a few times, and then go crossways to those lengthwise cuts that you just made. And you wind up with nice little bits of onion like this. Okay, so that's done. That will go into the chicken later once we get it cooking. Next, of course, we need to get the chicken cut. I've just got a basic boneless chicken breast here. You can get them for a fairly decent price at any store. And we're just going to cut it into nice little irregular bits. You don't have to get them to a specific size. You just want to keep them small enough that they can cook through pretty easily without taking too long. Once your chicken breast is cut, you're ready to start cooking. So what you want to do is heat up a skillet to a nice medium heat, and then we're going to add a shot of vegetable oil to it just to make sure that nothing's going to stick and that all of the chicken and onion is going to cook evenly. So we'll add just a little bit of this vegetable oil. And we're going to wait just a second for that vegetable oil to get nice and hot before we add the chicken. In most cases, you don't want to add food to a cold pan. You want the pan to be nice and hot before you add anything into it. Okay, so the oil is nice and hot now. You can see we got a little bit of smoke coming up off of it. So we're just going to carefully throw a chicken right in there. You just want to keep the chicken moving so it doesn't sit too long in one spot and burn. One of the great advantages, though, of how small of pieces that we cut this chicken into is that it's going to cook through it really, really fast. Once you get the chicken to look like this, where most of the pieces have a nice grayish-white color on the outside, you know it's time to add your onion. I also really love the flavor of fresh minced garlic, so I'm going to throw a little bit of that in with this as well. If you can't get your hands on any garlic, don't worry about it. It's not essential. Garlic powder, the seasoning garlic powder, will work just as well later on. We're just going to stir this around for a little while until the onion starts to turn brown. That's when we know that the sugars in the onion are starting to caramelize. I went with a white onion because it has such a strong flavor to start out with that it's really, really good once you get it all caramelized. Yellow onion works just as well. I wouldn't recommend purple onion or red onion in this case because it's got a much milder flavor that does not stand up very well to the cooking process. Once you've got it looking like this, where you can see the outer edges of your chicken are starting to brown and the onion is starting to get that nice brown color around its edges as well, that's when you know it's time to turn down the heat and start seasoning. Our spices are actually really simple, and what's great about this is it's really versatile as well. The spice blend that we're going to use You don't have to just use it on chicken. It can also be used for ground beef, steak, pork, whatever meat you can get your hands on. You throw this seasoning blend we're about to put together onto that meat and it will be ready for whatever Mexican meal that you have in mind. So what we're going to start with is just a little bit of salt. I don't really have precise measurements on any of this because, again, it's such a versatile recipe that the exact proportions of spices aren't really important. As long as you don't overdo any one of the spices, you'll be able to work it out. Now after the salt, of course, we've got a little bit of black pepper. We're going to add just a dash of onion powder. Not a whole lot because we've already got that really nice onion browned in there. But there is a little bit of difference between the flavor in onion powder and cooked onion, and we just want a little bit of that. This is also where you would add garlic powder if you weren't able to get your hands on fresh garlic like I did. Next come the two spices that really define a solid Mexican seasoning. First, we've got chili powder. Chili powder is great because it adds just a little bit of kick to whatever you're cooking. It has a nice red color. Makes it look really appetizing, and it's got a really nice mild flavor to it. And finally, the secret ingredient to any good Mexican seasoning is going to be cumin. Cumin is fantastic for a lot of different reasons. You can use it in a lot of different dishes as well. It's got a really nice, rich, earthy flavor. It smells definitely almost like a spicy taco. What's great is if you can find this brand, this 5th season, you can get this size of bottle of cumin for under $1, which is absolutely fantastic. Now if your chicken mixture has dried out just a little bit from the remaining heat in the skillet, all you need to do is just add a splash of water to it real quick. Okay, we're going to turn the heat back on the skillet just enough to kind of steam some of that water back out. Help release some of that excess moisture. Okay, and so once you've got it all nice and heated up again, your mixture should look roughly like this. You got the chicken with a nice rich red color on it from that chili powder that we added. The smell coming off of it should be absolutely amazing once that cumin starts to heat up and really release its aromas. And once you get to this point, you should be good to go. By this point, your rice, which I've got on the stove back here behind me, should be ready to go. And all we need now is some tortillas. So we're going to want to start with just a little scoop of our rice here. Just enough to make a nice little bed for the chicken that we're about to add. It really doesn't matter how much of each ingredient you put in there, just as long as you're not overfilling the tortilla. And then in my burritos, I like to add just a little bit of salsa. And because I'm American, I like to add a bit of ranch dressing to everything. Okay, so the last step now is just to fold this up. Best way to do it, bring the ends in over the top of the food, fold it over like that, just get it, make sure everything's nice and tucked in, and roll it up. And there we have it. Really simple ingredients, but super delicious chicken burritos.